You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Weston Williams, joined by Oliver Camacho and Matt Cummings. All right, this week, Annie Burridge goes Inside the Huddle. General Director of Austin Opera, Annie Burridge is marking her 10th anniversary with the company that is also kicking off its 40th birthday season with a spectacular birthday concert. 40 is the new 30, so that makes Oliver, 60? Plus, in the 2-minute drill, performances of Wozzeck have been canceled at La Fenice, so now it's getting personal. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. Click follow. On Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign. You can also stream episodes of OBS every Saturday at 10 a.m. Central on AmplissSoundsRadio.com. Email us your hot takes by writing to mailbag@operaboxscore.com or upload a voice memo using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, operaboxscore.com. However you contribute, you'll get an OBS beer coaster, an OBS lapel pin, and a #1 OBS fan foam finger just for sharing your own hot take. And, I was sitting just before now, just sitting daydreaming, letting my mind wander back and forth over a very small net. And I heard a sound. And I was like, oh yeah, Oliver's back this week.
Yeah, I am back. I'm back.
What's your update?
Well, as I said, this is the really wonky part of the season. Everybody's exhausted, and the top seeds are not doing well if they're even competing at all in these final tournaments of the year. Over the weekend, a Masters 1000 in China, in Shanghai, was competed, and Novak Djokovic looked like he was going to make it to the finals, but he got knocked out by a qualifier ranked like number 204 or something ridiculous like that, named Valentin Vachereau of Monaco. So this Valentin Vachereau, who beat along the way Bublik and Grigospor and Mahach and Runa, which were all already pretty incredible victories for himself, he beat Novak Djokovic, the greatest of all time, according to some, and then went on to the final to meet his cousin, Rinderknecht. I think his name was Arthur Rinderknecht of France, but his cousin. And he won the tournament, his first Masters 1000. There's a statistic out there somewhere that in his entire career, he had won maybe the equivalent of $500,000 in all the tournaments he's played over however many years. He doubled his lifetime earnings in that one match by winning the 1000 Masters. So congratulations to Valentin Vachereau. His ranking goes up to, I think, like 40 after that win, and he might even be seeded next year. But yeah, never saw his name before last weekend. And like I said, end of the tennis season, very, very bizarre things happen. But sometimes fun Cinderella stories like that.
Well, ranked well above 40, but also the Cinderella story himself, Matt Cummings. What's the haps with you?
Oliver kept talking about Vachereau's Cinderella, and I was like, isn't that the one by Maria Malibran's sister?
Viardot Cinderella.
I know. Speaking of things I didn't know, was I listening to audio from my computer speakers with my headphones plugged in, nothing coming out of them for the first minute and a half of this podcast? Maybe, but we're all here.
A little peek behind the curtain at the stellar production value and technical sophistication of the Opera Box Score staff, who are working tirelessly behind the scenes to make sure we don't trip over ourselves every 3 seconds. I have to delete a lot of Oliver saying the word "so" at the beginning of sentences. So let's talk some opera.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
So that email we got a couple months ago or a couple weeks ago about us not really expanding our investigation, or not reaching far enough into the American opera scene to understand what's happening. That one really stung, because I do feel that we try to do that, but we can try even harder just to show that we do care about companies that aren't in Chicago or New York or Philadelphia or Boston.
But crucially are not San Francisco.
Yeah, they're dead to us completely.
And today we bring you a little bit about Austin Opera. We're going to meet Austin Opera's general director, Annie Burridge. And it's a great time to meet her. She is celebrating her 10th season or 10th anniversary at the company. And the company is also embarking on what they're calling their 40th birthday season, which is actually their 39th season because their 40th anniversary season will be the 2026-27 season. And when that season begins in 2026, they will have moved to their brand new venue called the Butler. There's two names there. Sarah and Ernest Butler Performance Center will be opening in 2026. So this year is sort of a transitional year. They're beginning with a spectacular birthday concert starring Lea Crocetto, Zoe Reams. There's more people in this concert Jonathan Burton, who is just in Chicago singing Canio, and baritone Malcolm McKenzie, with the orchestra conducted by their music director, Timothy Myers. Then they'll go on to perform Fiddler on the Roof in February. And I think La Boheme is the other opera in their season. I should really know this by now, but
Can't buy PR like this.
yeah. I learned a lot about Austin Opera in this conversation. I do feel like an idiot. I mean, I sound like an idiot even now, like this opera company's been around for, 40 years, and I'm just now trying to understand what their brand is, who their artists are, what community they're serving. I mean, when we think about Texas, what do we think about? We think about Houston. We think about that company and Dallas, Fort Worth. But yeah, Austin also has an opera company, and they're turning 39 this year. So happy birthday to the Austin Opera Company. And we will sneak into this conversation with Annie Burridge by first listening to a friend of the show, Elena Villalon, singing Susanna from a production of Marriage of Figaro from 2021. Today, our guest is the general director of Austin Opera, Annie Burridge. Welcome to Opera Box Score.
Thank you so much. It's very exciting to be here.
Well, I got this press release about the 40th anniversary season of Austin Opera, and I have to say, I try really hard to keep up with everything and to understand what the landscape is here in the U.S. in terms of opera. And I'm going to have you teach me about where Austin Opera fits into this landscape. But before we talk about that, can you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, how you got involved in administration? I heard you were a singer.
I was, yes. I'm a recovering coloratura. And when I headed off to college at 18, I decided that I wanted to be an opera singer, and then I wanted to run an opera company. Having no idea really what either of those things would entail in terms of my journey and what I had to learn to do so. But that is essentially what happened. I went to Penn State, where I majored in music and minored in business administration. And
smart choice.
Yes. Folks often say, oh, it was smart that you had a backup, but it was never a backup for me. It was always part of the plan. I was truly as interested in what it took to produce opera and keep an opera organization alive and thriving as being a part of the art itself. And then I went on to the New England Conservatory and did 2 degrees there in voice and opera performance. I was there the final years of John Moriarty's long reign at NEC. So I got to study with, some really experienced, legendary folks. And then the first young artist program I got into was Des Moines. And so that was a very formative experience touring the state of Iowa in January and February. It's quite cold. And then getting to be a young artist at their summer festival was a great experience. And so after a few years of doing that and having the opportunity to work as a young artist or a resident artist, which gives you the opportunity to be in the office almost as much as you are on stage because you're coming in, you're working there every day. I started to feel that I might have a great deal more to offer the industry, the field, than I had to offer as a coloratura soprano. And so I started getting serious about making the switch. I did a program at the University of Pennsylvania in nonprofit administration, a master's program there. And that really helped me accelerate the switch into administration and helped me land my very first job as the grant writer for Opera Philadelphia.
Opera Philadelphia, one of our favorite companies here at Opera Box Score. So you started grant writing at Opera Philadelphia. Did that lead to big development jobs there, or development roles there?
It did. And it was, such an extraordinary time to land at that company. David Devan had arrived maybe a year before I did. And I was there for 9 years, and the company grew so much, and I had the opportunity to grow along with it and take on more and more responsibility. So yeah, the next step is I was heading, all of development, and then I got to head all of development and marketing. And then my last position there was managing director. So I was still overseeing the entire revenue side of the company, but I had a more kind of formal place at the table for artistic planning. And it was an incredible learning experience. I learned so much.
So then you got, I guess, poached, or you left Opera Philadelphia to take on this role at Opera Austin?
Yes, at Austin Opera. I know. And my very first time ever in Austin, Texas, was my first round of interviews. So, I just felt that the company had so much potential. The city had so much potential, and a lot of the kind of immediate areas for growth were really in my wheelhouse because I had the opportunity to explore them at Opera Philadelphia. We went through a huge rebrand there. We really diversified the repertoire that we were presenting. We built a major gifts program from the ground up. And so I felt my experience doing that would lend itself particularly well to Austin Opera. Austin, Texas is, it's a great city. I've been here 9 years now, and I have no plan to leave. So my family and I, we love this city very much. But it has an underdeveloped infrastructure when it comes to our arts organizations. In Philadelphia, it wasn't unusual for me to be able to secure $3, $4, $5 million a year in foundation grants to fund our programming. When I arrived in Austin, they had about $10,000 that year. So there's no legacy wealth or foundations here. Folks didn't make their fortunes here 200 years ago and put it in a foundation to serve, the arts and the parks. And so we've, most of the arts organizations here are about half the size that we should be for our market. But we're working on that. And across the board, the cultural landscape here is growing, and trying to build that infrastructure of philanthropy and community spirit to go along with the tremendous growth that the city has seen.
Well, probably not for the podcast, but it's interesting to me. So sorry, audience. This is just for me. My former boss at WFMT left Chicago.
George.
Oh, you know George Preston. Okay.
Of course.
Yeah. And it just seems like there's so much opportunity over there, and that, it can be built from the ground up. I don't know if you have the same feeling about, the reason to be in Austin in this time, like that there's young people, there's, an unformed art scene, perhaps, but there's resources. Is that a fair characterization?
Yes, there are resources. They aren't the traditional resources that have uplifted our art form for centuries. But someone's got to figure out how to to tap into these new communities and new resources. Yes, and I would agree. You know, after putting in 9 years here, this organization, I feel tremendous ownership and pride, and as if it is something that I have built and we're continuing to build. We're literally building right now. I'm talking to you from my home because we've purchased a building which is under construction right now. We'll have our own 200-seat theater and costume shop and event space. About a year from now is when it will open. And so that's just another really exciting chapter. We're in desperate need of performing arts space here in Austin. And so we're really looking forward to being able to contribute to remedying that need.
Well, we'll put a pin in that because that's the Butler Performance Center, correct, that you're talking about? Okay, so we'll talk about that in a moment. So now that we know that your history, you spent a lot of time at Opera Philadelphia, and now you've been at Austin Opera, where is the crossover? And maybe a better question is to help us understand how Austin fits into the Texas opera landscape and then maybe the American landscape in general, because I feel like we hear a lot about Houston. I think people who are online know a lot about Dallas, and then maybe people who are more industry savvy know what Fort Worth's brand was, if it's not that way still. But I have to say, I haven't really heard a lot about Austin Opera. So I'm here to evangelize for you guys and to let everybody know what's going on. So yeah, there's a question in there somewhere. So maybe like zooming into Texas and expanding out to what other companies you feel are in the same category.
So as I said, we are about half the size that we should be for our market, which makes us considerably smaller than our colleagues in Houston. Houston's an incredible company with an incredible legacy, artistically, but also in terms of philanthropic support. Dallas Opera as well. Ian Dara is a great colleague, call each other all the time. That's when, if we need a singer, that's who we get on the phone with. You know, if something goes awry, I'm going to need a Rosina tonight. Can I get someone here from Dallas right now? And vice versa. He's been an incredibly helpful colleague in that way, as has Houston. They've certainly called us with an SOS on occasion. So we have great relationships. Yeah, Austin, we're about a $5 million company, whereas Houston's going to be about 5 times larger than that, and Dallas 2 or 3 times larger than us. I would say that, we don't look necessarily to distinguish ourselves from our other colleagues who are opera providers. We're all in the same boat trying to make it work for our city. You know, what matters to us is that we are producing work that is reflective of the place where we're producing it. And Austin has such an incredible, rich heritage with Hispanic music, with Latine culture. And so we've really, as a company, leaned into that in a way that I do think is a bit different than most other opera companies. I think we were the first ever company to hire a curator for Hispanic and Latinx programming. We have an endowment specifically for Spanish language programming. We've also leaned into other things that are reflective of Austin, right? We did the revolution of Steve Jobs. We have a huge tech community here. And that was a lot of fun. But when it comes to kind of the return on that effort and investment, just nothing has come close to the relationships and the enthusiasm we've built with our colleagues at the Mexican consulate and in the Latine community here in Austin.
So you're saying return on investment on the Steve Jobs opera. I'm interpreting as saying you guys were excited about it, but the audience didn't come.
I mean, our typical audience loved it. Mm-hmm. I would not say we were successful in pulling in anyone from the enormous Apple campus that's 3 miles from here. Mm-hmm. I will also say it was during COVID. We had an ice storm. Opening night had to be canceled. So it was a stressful production overall. But no, it certainly didn't crack the code on, new corporate giving or anything like that. Most seasons, we do have something that's stretching the legacy audience. We've done, and maybe not for a city like Chicago, but for a city like Austin, we've done Joby Talbot's Everest, we've done Kevin Putt's Silent Night. We did a new production, a new orchestration of Cruzar. We've done David T. Little's Soldier Songs. So, nearly every season we are able to put some new discoveries in for our audience here in Austin. Our real commitment is to doing anything we can to develop new works with storytelling that's really rooted in this part of the country as well as Mexico, Latin America. There just aren't many operas that tell stories kind of rooted in that culture. And so to the extent that we can help develop those new works, we're going to premiere an excerpt from a new work at our birthday concert coming up. That's really where we're trying to make our mark, is really trying to be a champion for Spanish language new works.
Do you want to talk about the Opera ATX? Is that the name of the initiative? The Hispanic and Latinx programming?
Not exactly. Opera ATX is what we launched about 8 years ago, just to expand our programming beyond our main performing arts venue here in Austin. So to take things to different types of venues that just offer multiple access points for folks into the genre, in addition to coming to see something in a 2,400 seat hall. But the works that we've offered through Opera ATX as time has gone on have become pretty influenced by our commitment to the Spanish-speaking community here and to the Latinx community in Austin.
Well, we are here to talk about this 40th anniversary season, or are you calling it the 40th birthday season? I'm not sure which is if there's a difference, but this is the season that is going to conclude with the opening of the new performance center.
Not exactly. So we're calling it our birthday because it would actually be another year until the anniversary of our first full season as a company. But we were, the company was founded and incorporated and filed for in 1986. So when we get to 2026, that's our birthday that's coming up. And it is a big year of transition as well. As we, currently are all working from home and borrowing rental facilities as our new performance center is under construction. But we will open next season with the opening of our new performance center. Okay.
So this year there is the birthday concert, which happens in November. And stars Lea Crochetto, amazing. Zoe Reams, we have her in Chicago. She's a hometown girl. We love her. Jonathan Burton, who just sang Cavaradossi here in Chicago. Not Canio in Chicago. Killer voice. And then a baritone I don't know, Malcolm McKenzie. I'm not familiar. But it's just like greatest hits, plus you're doing an excerpt of the work you're commissioning. Is that what you said?
Yes, we do have greatest hits, some of them really rooted in productions from the company's history. As we get into Act 2, we get into some Spanish language works that we have performed and presented before, but also we'll be premiering an excerpt from a brand new piece that was workshopped in our residency for Latinx creatives. And then we'll close with some, rousing musical theater bangers, as they would say.
And then the season of fully staged operas this year includes Fiddler on the Roof and your second show. Say it again? And Bohème. Okay. And those performances are going to be at the Long Center for the Performing Arts. That include the two operas?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. And Timothy Myers is your music director, and he is. It sounds like he's a big deal over there at Austin.
He's great. I have known Timothy my entire adult life. We actually met when I was a graduate student at NEC. I was singing Cunegunda and Candide, and he was flown up from Florida State, where he was a conducting student, to conduct that production. And that's when we first met. And so we've, always kind of stayed in touch. He conducted some things in Philadelphia when I was working there and in Curtis. And then we had an opening here at Austin Opera, and he threw his name in the hat. And it's just a pleasure working with him. He's a wonderful musician, but also, has just such an extraordinary strategic mind. He's such a great, great partner.
Well, a long time ago, I used to be the co-host of another podcast called Opera Now, and he's friends with the producer of that show, Michael Rice. So these names, Timothy's been a name that's been just in my conscious for 20 years. I did have another question for you. That's sort of a sticky topic, and you can answer it as in a way that feels as authentic to you as you care, without while being discreet if necessary. But I wanted to talk to you because you are a woman leader in the opera, and I hate to gender you in qualifying your leadership, characterizing your leadership. It has nothing to do with your gender, but it does make you a little bit of a minority in our industry. And I just wonder how, Texas has Corey Dastor, which is great. But just like, in your goings about, you have a strong relationship with Opera America. I'm sure you've been to other conferences or, industry events. What is it like for someone like you to see that you are a minority in this industry?
It's such a great question. And it's not one that I've reflected on recently. Certainly when I entered the field and was attending my first conferences, I felt, whoa, I am in a minority here. And even when I was appointed to this position 9 years ago, it was a big deal to have a woman appointed to a position like this. But it's less and less a big deal these days. I have so many female colleagues, female general director colleagues. So I don't feel, it doesn't feel like we're a minority anymore. There's plenty more diversity we should be striving for in the field. My only caution, the only thing that gives me some concern, having dealt with over the course of my career, I've dealt with plenty of situations, of crappy situations that were unique to me because I was a woman. But that's a different podcast. And
it may not be a different podcast. Actually, we talk about these things all the time. We had Francesca on the show, and she was talking about how she wanted to create, work environments where mothers felt like they could, feel safe and, not be annoying to whatever production for having a kid, and talking about how to support families so that they can be happier, when they work, and change the hours and tell them where the zoos are, this type of thing, So I don't know if you're talking about that or if you're talking about something else. So.
No, that has become actually a huge platform to me, because that is a place where I still remain in the minority, as being a parent. And we all know the data is quite clear that being a mother in the workplace is treated very differently than a father in the workplace. And so when I had the opportunity to step into a leadership position and set a different kind of bar and expectation for what it would mean to have to be a mom in a leadership position, that was really important to me. And so from very early on, when we moved to Austin, my daughter was 3 at the time. And I always made sure that, at a rehearsal like our Sitzprobe, where you had everybody there, you've got the orchestra and the chorus and all the soloists, I was always really purposeful to have my husband drop by with my daughter, and I wanted all of those people to see me doing my job and acknowledging, my gorgeous little girl. And she's become quite a fixture in the opera house. She's a fixture in the office. And we have to normalize parenting. And I do believe that we were actually the first company in the industry to develop a parent resource guide. I know that because Timothy O'Leary did borrow it from me. And so I'm sure that Francesca, that this is also a passionate pursuit of us, but just This is a resource guide which helps if you're coming to town with your kids. It lets you know here's all the childcare options, here's all the great restaurants that have playscapes. And, at first, my artistic staff said, okay, well, we'll send this out if we know if an artist has kids. And I said, no, 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 no. You need to send it to everyone. We are normalizing parenthood. You are welcome here, because if great people like us can't procreate, that's not good for the planet. Like, we need to make little arts lovers out of people who love this art form and are committed to it, as we are. And my daughter, she's 12. She's a professional actress. That wasn't my plan. That's her plan. But that's a big part of what keeps me at this business every day, is I have to ensure that when she comes into her own, that there's a thriving arts community where she can work and where she can enjoy great pieces of art. It's a huge driver for me.
Well, good. We sort of touched a little bit on the topic that just by virtue of you talking about parents, and gay men aren't naturally parents, but maybe that's one of the reasons why these things have been overlooked, for many generations, because it maybe wasn't until, Josh Winograde and, Andrew Jorgensen started having kids and people
So excited, yes.
But, I am sort of, skirting around the topic of our industry being overrepresented by gay white men in leadership, which is why I asked you about your sense that maybe as a woman you're a minority in the field, but you say that it's getting better.
It really is. I mean, I think we should rerun the data and see if that's just my impression or if that's true. But it does feel quite different. My concern that I, started to reference is that it's also, an incredibly difficult time in this business. Mounting an opera is nearly impossible. Right now, our expenses have grown to an extraordinary level. The revenue sources are dwindling. And so I do worry about scenarios, glass ceiling, glass cliff scenarios, where these are the times when a company is so concerned or so desperate that they'll finally open the doors to a woman or to someone who isn't white, and they are just set up to fail and to not succeed. And so I feel really strongly that helping boards get information on how to support new leaders when they come into their organization it's really critical if these organizations are going to continue.
Well, the birthday, on that note, the birthday concerts will be performed November 15th and November 16th at the Long Center for the Performing Arts in Austin. Annie Burridge, when the Butler Center opens, we would love if you could share a video tour with us, and we could put the video up at operaboxscore.com so people could see and be, invited to see it for themselves. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you.
Wayne Tigas singing the Te Deum from Tosca in a flash mob from 2014.
Prime year for a flash mob. I love it.
Yeah, there'll be There'll be a link to that flash mob video in the show notes for today's episode at operaboxscore.com.
You know, I do roast the flash mob, but I have to say I miss that era of American society, and not just because we weren't actively descending into fascism as obviously, but I there's something about hearing opera in an unexpected space that makes me feel all giddy inside. Maybe that's just me.
The thing that makes that flash mob particularly cool is the chorus. It's one thing to have like a tenor get up there and sing E luce van le stelle, which is like corny, you know. But when everybody like comes out of the woodworks and they're like, you think that they're fellow shoppers, and it's like, no, it's a flash mob. But they put all the groceries back. I don't know. I think there's just something we just can't have it in our society anymore. I just tried to do a Le Grand Macabre flash mob in the middle of the mall last week.
You're going to get
arrested.
arrested.
Out. Yeah, it was really sad. And if you think that justice has not been served by kicking me out of the mall for trying to sing just a little bit of Le Grand Macabre that we all know and love, let us know. Send us a message, mailbag at operaboxscore.com. You can also go to the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, operaboxscore.com. You can also spread the word about us. Find a friend, force them to listen. You can also leave a rating on Apple Podcast or Spotify, but only if it's a good one. Let's go to the 2-minute drill.
This just in. The 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
Teatro La Fenice has canceled its opening night performance of Wozzeck due to the ongoing strike caused by the appointment of Beatrice Venezzi as music director. The strike is supported by all the major opera houses in Italy, as well as La Fenice subscribers, 140 of whom have already signed an open letter opposing her appointment. That's for you, Matt. We were shocked and concerned to learn of the appointment of Beatrice Venezzi as music director, a role that requires expertise and experience previously held by figures of undisputed value and ability, reads the letter.
James Mina, former longtime leader of Opera Carolina, has posted a video on his Facebook defending his reputation against what he called, quote, unrelenting gossip and innuendo. He said, I have been told that some at Opera Carolina have said that I stole money from the company and that artists of the La Boheme cast were not paid on time because of this theft. This is simply untrue. Mina was ousted earlier this year from Opera Carolina before his contract expired after 25 years with the company.
In an update to a previous story, ICE has dropped its deportation case against Utah-based violinist John Shin following his detainment earlier this year. Shin's attorney, Adam Craik, told the Denver Gazette, quote, that means John is not in the deportation proceedings anymore. We won entirely. He's out. Craik confirmed that ICE is no longer authorized to proceed with deportation and expects Shin to obtain a green card in about 16 months.
The Metropolitan Opera Chorus will be partnering with the non-for-profit Sing for Your Seniors to bring live performances to senior communities around New York City. The organization focuses on serving veterans, LGBTQ elders, and those living with Alzheimer's and dementia. This partnership lets us expand beyond our Broadway roots and bring elders the richness of opera performed at the highest level. We're thrilled to share their artistry with the communities we serve, says Executive Director Tracy Bear.
The Sydney Symphony Orchestra, Orchestra Victoria, and the West Australian Symphony Orchestra are implementing a new technology to monitor hearing hazards on stage. Sottovoce is that system. It's the first one designed to provide arts organizations with real-time data needed to create safer performance environments. Quote, Sottovoce is not just about measurement, said co-founder and CEO Des O'Neill. It's about empowering orchestras to make smarter, data-driven decisions, while ensuring artists thrive on stage and helping to build a culture that values and protects musicians' hearing.
Finalists have been announced for the 9th edition of the Paris Opera Competition. American mezzo-soprano Gabrielle Bethig, French soprano Camille Chopin, British tenor Aaron Godfrey Mays, Russian soprano Elena Gvirichvili, British tenor Samuel Harris, Israeli baritone Noam Hines, French countertenor Theo Imar, and Chilean countertenor Jose Andres Munoz, British baritone Stefan Lloyd Owen, and American soprano and friend of the show, Catherine Henry, will compete in the final round with orchestra on November 18th at the Théâtre Marigny. Do we even need to say who we're rooting for?
Major awards news. Friend of the show, husband and wife duo Andreas Scholl and pianist Tamar Halperin have been awarded Germany's Federal Cross of Merit, the highest decoration available in Germany's honor system. Meanwhile, famed soprano Katia Ricciarelli received the 2025 Caruso Tribute Prize alongside repeat awardee Alessandro Lora. Soprano and founder of the women's equity advocate the Donne Foundation, Gabriella Di Laccio has been invested as member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire for her services to music and gender equality. Finally, veteran television director of opera and classical music Brian Large has been awarded the Czech Ministry of Culture's Artist Bohemie Amicus Medal.
In trade news, David Margulis has been announced as the new director of artistic operations at Arizona Opera. Arizona Opera is the company where I sang my first professional roles, and joining this great team as director of artistic operations feels like coming home, says Margulis.
Friend of the show, Patrick Dupré-Quigley, begins his new post as artistic director of Opera Lafayette this month and has announced that he will be moving on from his position as artistic director of Seraphic Fire, the vocal ensemble he founded in Miami after the 2025-26 season. James K. Bass, a longtime ensemble member and current associate conductor, will take over as artistic director.
Soprano Latonia Moore is taking on a new role as Art Smart's newly minted director of engagement, where she will be a national ambassador for the organization. Latonia Moore will help us deepen our work in communities across the country, ensuring that more young people have the support needed to reach their full potential, said Executive Director Ahmad Mays. Her impact extends far beyond the stage, and we are excited to have her join in this new and important role.
Crunching the numbers, in a rare last-minute programming shift, the Met will bring back The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay for additional performances later this season. During the original run of 7 performances, 87% of paid seats were sold, significantly higher than at most operas. Of those, 35% of the attendees were new to the Met and 30% were 40 or younger. While previous revivals of recent hits like Fire Shut Up in My Bones and The Hour struggled to recapture the success of their earlier runs, Peter Gelb argued that reviving Cavalier and Clay this season builds on the momentum of recent weeks. Each performance, he said, sold better than the previous one.
On the disabled list, Xavier Anduaga was forced to cancel his performance of Elvino in La Sonnambula at the Met, paving the way for friend of the show Lawrence Brownlee to step in. Said Brownlee, "It was both exhilarating and nerve-wracking having only a day and a half to prepare for a completely new production. But I believe in pushing myself out of the comfort zone. It's how we grow, find excitement, and keep the blood pumping."
This just in, a slight update to the previous item. Anduaga is also out for the October 14th that we are recording right now performance of La Sonnambula and will be replaced again by Lawrence Brownlee. Also, Nadine Sierra will be out of that performance and Alexandra Nowakowski will go on in the role of Amina. Nadine Sierra is ill as well, wishing both of these fantastic singers in bocca al lupo. And to wrap up on this day, October 14th, 1628 saw the first performance of Marco Galliano and Jacopo Peri's La Flora in Florence. Antonio Salieri's Palmira Regina di Persia premiered in Vienna, 1795. You knew that was Vienna. You've seen Amadeus. Offenbach's La Bonne d'Enfant premiered in Paris in 1856. And 1859, Francisco Barbieri's Entre mi mujer y el negro premiered in Madrid. 12 years later, in 1871, the same composers, El hombre es débil premiered in Madrid. How was my Spanish, Oliver? I'll take it. 1911, first performance of Zandona's Conchita in Milan. That starred the composer's future wife, Tarquinia Tarquini, which sounds like a Roman emperor, but isn't. The first performance of Arnold Schoenberg's opera Die glückliche Hand took place in 1924 at the Volksoper Wien. Eugen Dalbert's Der Golem premiered in Frankfurt in 1926. Alexander von Zemlinsky's opera Der Kreidekreis premiered in Zurich in 1933. And Dominic Argento's opera Postcards Morocco premiered at Minnesota Opera in 1971.
Birthdays on October 14th include Heinrich Schütz, the German composer who maybe wrote the first German opera, Daphne. We have no music, but that's what Wikipedia says. He was born in 1585. Jumping ahead to 1871 for the birth of Austrian conductor, composer, and teacher Alexander von Zemlinsky, also the composer of Der Kreidekreis.
Close
In
enough.
1907, Alan Jones, the American tenor, was born. He appeared in the Marx Brothers film A Night at the Opera. In 1932, it was the birth of American tenor Enrico Di Giuseppe, born in South Philadelphia. In 1934, Swedish soprano Berit Lindholm was born in Stockholm. Happy birthday to Italian-based Alfredo Zanazzo, born this day in 1946. And we celebrate the birthday of the late composer Kaya Sariaho, born October 14th in 1952.
And that's your 2-minute drill.
Alone with the sky of romance above. Alone when you whisper goodbye, my love. But I will still remember the happiness we've known. And though I may be alone, I'm not alone.
We had to share a bit of that duet sung by Alan Jones, the birthday boy, with Kitty Carlisle, Alone, from the Marx Brothers film A Night at the Opera. I know for a lot of people, at least my generation, Three Stooges, Marx Brothers, and Looney Tunes were some of our first introduction to opera. I remember watching those Marx Brothers movies
At the premiere.
21 years old, taking myself to the movie. You know? I'm just really stunned by the news, the breaking news of Nadine Sierra and Xavier Anduaga.
We're doing it live here, folks. Real
Bowing
reporting.
out of tonight's performance of Sonambula. There's this YouTube, or I should say Instagram reel, or probably TikTok, of Nadine Sierra singing the Cabaletta a non giunge, and she puts in the high F at the end. And I didn't know she was a high F girl, so it was really, really surprising. Maybe she sang one too many high Fs and she's got to take a break. But the HD is on Saturday as of this recording, so when this podcast drops, check the listings to see if they've swapped her out, because I don't need to see Sonambula if I'm not going to see Nadine Sierra, unless it's somebody like if it was Lisette Oropesa or something like that, you know? Alex
Novikowski actually has like one of the highest profile opera TikToks, among classical music. It's an audience that of tens that we could only dream of. So hopefully that means that we'll be able to get a little bit of a look behind the scenes of what all was involved in this, whatever she's allowed to.
Maybe we should try to get an interview with her
after we've just disparaged her.
Can you slip? No, I'm not a fan. Can we slip into her DMs?
We can try.
We can slip into the DMs of La Fenice to protest the loss of my beloved Wozzeck.
That sounds more like a closed letter, Weston.
I will say, clearly, I mean, this story, ever since I say we broke it as if we were the first people to talk about it. But ever since we first started talking about this story, that nothing has changed. The La Fenice is standing strong in not letting Beatrice Venezia get away with being appointed. There is quite a lot of unity around this. And I think there is some tendency to think, well, this is simply a political matter because she was appointed, because she has these close associations with the Maloney government. And there is a little bit of that, but we have an insider sort of scoop here.
We can't say his name, but a conductor / professor in Milan.
Yes, a conductor / professor in Milan has sent us via way of carrier pigeon a little bit of an insider knowledge as to what this is all about. We'll play a little bit of it because it was quite a long message. We'll play just a bit of it right now.
At least before the 70s, 80s, if right-wing governments had to propose someone, the proposals were the futurists, Marinetti, D'Annunzio, Mascagni, Petrassi, Dalla Piccola, who were all conservative politically, And then when it was the government of the left, the proposed people in power were Berio, Maderna, and people of that caliber, Claudio Abbado. And then when the right government came back with Berlusconi, then it was Muti. Okay, Muti is not a genius, but it's still Muti. It is an artistic consistency. But now they're playing with, caricature of artists, caricature of artistic directors, caricature of conductors, caricature of composers. It's a miserable shame to see this deadly fight to affirm the in power as long as it is my it's my right-wing oh no, then I want to combat you and impose my left-wing but still
So in addition to that message which you just heard, he also talked a lot about how the perception is that artists are all left-wing and the left-wing artists are therefore standing up and protesting. He also talks about, he gives an example of another case where there's a left-wing artist who was appointed to a different position, who isn't, in his opinion, very good, but there wasn't a protest about that. But overall, the thing that is new about this, and then what he says in the clip you just heard, is all about how every side for these major Italian opera organizations is going to appoint someone politically, which I do think is true.
But they used to have chops.
Exactly. This is notable in that this is I think the quote we had from a couple of weeks ago was like, it's not that she is a conductor who happens to be conservative. She's a conservative who happens to be a conductor, right? The expertise does not seem to be there, and it seems to be completely political in a way that is unusual for Italy. Now, this is kind of a real Kennedy Center kind of situation. So we here in America are kind of rolling our eyes at the amateurs over there. I think when it comes to, like, of course, we've been, Donald Trump has been appointing incompetent people to lead artistic organizations since his first terms.
Are you saying that Rick Grinnell is not a steward of culture? You think he's not going to get a major award someday?
But this is really earth-shattering, I think, to Italians specifically. And this, anonymous source that we've got here, you can hear the emotion in his voice because, this is Italy. This is the birthplace of opera. This is something they really care about. The politics matter, but also the artistry matters even more. It's a very Italian sort of take, I think, on this.
I mean, honestly, Weston, I think that you're selling the impact of the story a little bit short because one major thing has happened, which is I have changed my opinion on open letters. If the fascists hate them, I guess I have to like them.
I do think it is really fascinating, too, how you get subscribers jumping in on the action. It's not just the musicians. I don't even think of, in the United States, I don't even think of subscribers as a unified class of people. I think usually when I hear about subscribers, it's always individuals, who are complaining about not having their favorite seat that year. But getting together and getting people who are like, oh, we have the money, we're getting the subscriptions, we are also displeased with it. This is something that I feel like is so foreign to me as an American. I find it fascinating.
Well, the Met definitely seems to think that they're listening to their audience ticket buyers.
True.
With their shift in programming, turning that ocean liner around as fast as they possibly can. I mean, it's pretty unusual for an opera house that famously books all of its contracts 5 years out to be making changes 4 months in advance.
I really wonder if this is like the new normal. I mean, because clearly we've seen bringing back Fire Shut Up in My Bones, The Hours, things like that, just a season later. I think that Peter Gelb is trying to have a more responsive organization to audience demand, which I think is a good thing.
Especially since there was an audience that they're trying desperately to attract of not a million years old and not people who have been coming to the Met since they were 14. But and it helps that there's a fallow month in February when the Met typically goes dark, especially with so they had an opening in the schedule and were perfectly happy to lean on the houses who had their original cast booked, but they were able to reassemble the whole cast to come back.
That's fascinating to me. I think that, I wonder how much of this was planned in advance as a possibility, if this is genuinely a spur-of-the-moment decision, looking at the ticket numbers. Specifically, Gelb cites, every performance selling better. There's good word of mouth associated with it. I think some of the initial reviews that I saw of the show were not necessarily like glowing, but all of the online talk about it I've heard, people seem to be kind of interested. Mason Bates is an interesting composer in a lot of ways. He got his, he made his sort of reputation as combining the electronic music of say a dance club with, classical orchestral composition. And some people kind of say he's a one-trick pony in that way. But certainly he seems to be like pouring a lot of effort into this production from the clips I've seen in terms of writing for a more traditionally operatic sound. And it seems to be resonating with people. And I will be very fascinated to see, given, again, the extreme drop-off in the quick revivals from Fire Shut With My Bones and The Hours, where, they brought them back like a year later, but no one came and saw them. Maybe this is a strategy they can implement for bringing in more people later in the exact same season when the hype is still fresh. I do think that it's an interesting experiment. I'm glad they're able to experiment. I'll love to see the results of that experiment. But I do think that, the sort of the Gelb strategy is often, see kind of the superficial.
Let's see what gets headlines, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad strategy during the experimental phase. And certainly you want to experiment while you have the resources to do so and not when it's too late. So good luck. Maybe that means that Oliver and I can actually go see the opera.
Well, only Weston is part of their target audience, but
yeah, true.
Speaking of experimenting, we'll wrap it up today with this story about Sottovoce, which sounds like an opera thing, but it's right now it's just beta for orchestras. But I guess the idea is to have monitors on everybody or all parts of the stage to hear what is the most dangerous part of the stage.
It's in front of the brass.
Yeah, pretty easy. I do think this is an understudied part of the orchestra. I do think that there is genuine danger if you've ever played in any ensemble any ensemble period, you know that there are moments where your hearing is not going to be, served very well. And when you are a musician, you depend on your hearing even more so than your average person depends on hearing. So I think this is a really cool program potentially. The sales pitch feels a little vague, but
well, it's coming on the heels of not really on the heels, but there was legal precedent. 6 years ago, there was a case in the United Kingdom where they awarded £750,000 to a musician because orchestras are legally accountable for preventing hearing damage.
Yeah.
And so it's not unusual at all for people who are, again, near the brass but also sometimes percussion. It's not fun to sit next to tubular bells either. I can tell you from experience. They'll often have a professional earplug to block out that the damaging frequencies. And so, to have real data about when that's necessary, that is also going to be surreptitious so that the audiences won't know if it's happening or not. Good. We should be protecting our artists.
What about all the Tristans that have to sing with Lisa Davidson, Honestly, it's so loud, that voice. So
It is important. And, if people who love opera can't hear, they can't listen to our podcast. And that's the real shame here. Let's wrap the show up.
Good call. Bad call. On Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. That's how we end the show. Let's start with Matt Cummings.
I am really enjoying the current season of Only Murders in the Building. I know that I've heard some people talk about how they've fallen off of it, but I continue to be really entertained by how they find ways to add in twists to the premise and keep it true to its roots, but also still speaking to the moment. And this season includes Diane Wiest as a retired opera singer. And if anyone can nail that specific mix of gravitas and flightiness of being a classical singer, it's Diane Wiest. So I'm looking forward to seeing the conclusion of this season and what part she'll play in it, because I'm sure you don't cast Diane Wiest if it's not going to be important.
Speaking of gravitas and flightiness, Oliver Camacho.
Just a shout out to our future friend of the show, Mayan Licht, who is singing Cherubino at Dortmund Opera. As of this taping, I think he's already done 2 performances. He's not the first countertenor to sing Cherubino, but somehow he feels very right for this role. He's so flamboyant. He's so spry and agile, physically agile, and just a real joy to just watch. If you are following him on social media, he's a great Instagram follow. He posts the best content, and I would wish I could go to Dortmund and watch that.
That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Get your voice heard and find links to stuff we've talked about at our website, operaboxscore.com. That's also where you can put your money where our mouths are. Give back to the OBS using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Waddell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho, and your audio editor is me. The executive producer of the OBS is George Cedarquist. For co-host Matt Cummings with guest Annie Burridge, I'm Weston Williams, asking you to continue the conversation about opera with a mysterious Italian maestro. We're back with an all-new show next week when another maestro, Carlo Rizzi, takes a free throw. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more unrelenting gossip and innuendo. Join us.